Hello, and welcome to the 90 Day Wins podcast. I'm so excited today because I get the opportunity to talk with author, podcaster, musician, and speaker Alan C. Paul. Hello, Alan. How are you doing today?
I am doing awesome, Sandy. I've been looking forward to this. Can't wait to have a great discussion with you.
Yes, welcome to the 90 Day Wins podcast. So, we have a few things in common, and I've been checking out your podcast. So, I am excited to talk with you about a number of things. But before we get started, I like for you to share a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Well, the first thing I always try to do is just try to put all this craziness into 4 words because people don't remember everything. So if you only need to know a couple of things about myself, it is I am a husband, I'm a father, I'm a creative, and I'm forgiven. So if you know those 4 things, then you got it pretty much. But to kind of break those down, husband of 27 years now to my wife, Leah, 3 kids, all grown now. So that covers father, creative. I'm a musician. I'm an author. I'm a podcaster. Have the God and Gig show, which is also the book and also podcast and produce for some other shows at my church. And forgiven. I'm a child of God. I'm only here because of the grace of God and because He's allowed me to get this far and forgiven my mistakes and give me a chance to get some new things right. So that's me in a nutshell.
I love it. I love it. So, I love that with your podcast, in my opinion, you have a heart for creatives. And
100%.
so share with me a little bit of how you came about putting your podcast together, God and Gigs, and the heart behind it.
Well, it always starts with a little bit of the embarrassing story, right? So it starts from me graduating from high school, college with my piano degree, music education, but having no clue in terms of how to really make a living as a musician.
Mhm.
So that took me, where I did not want to do performance. So it took me into teaching. And then from teaching, elementary school, and I went to full-time ministry because when I was teaching, I always was thinking about church choir. I was thinking about what I was doing in my local church. And so I wasn't really focusing on the teaching. So I went to full-time music because I really felt ministry of music because I thought God had called me there. And He did. And He did call me there. But I would say about 5 years into that, I realized that God also had another trick up his sleeve, and He wasn't going to leave me in the full time ministry. He actually was kind of calling me out of full time ministry, which is the weirdest thing to say in the world. That I was
Yeah.
called out of full time ministry, but I was convinced. I wasn't convinced, but I was convicted. So that led me into this world of wait, I'm supposed to play gigs, and I never really got that figured out in college.
Yeah.
And how do I make money doing this? And how do I not feel like I'm going to go to hell because I'm playing, this song about booty shaking or something else that's not necessarily, so that we play it on Sunday morning. So how do I play Friday and Saturday music and then do it on Sunday? So all of this is born out of my personal struggle.
Yes.
And so I talked to other musicians and creatives eventually to just say, how do I do this? How do I figure this out? So I was able to get interviews with Christian Dentley from Tate Six, Trent Phillips who's been the musical director for Donnie McClurkin for years, Tasha Cobbs Leonard, worked with all the greatest gospel artists. Trent's a great friend of mine, a mentor. So I just grabbed them, talked to them, and eventually put it into a book. And so God and Gigs is how you succeed as a musician without sacrificing your faith. And of course, I realized, as you know, eventually a lot of other creatives deal with the exact same issue, but it's not just us, right? It's not just
Yes.
musicians that deal with these issues. We're trying to balance musicians, creative life and faith. So now the God and Gig show really encompasses all of those creatives. But that's how it started, my personal struggle. And how do I balance these 2 worlds and how do I get it all figured out? And that's why I created a place where hopefully we're able to figure that out.
I love that because you're so right. When you are starting from a place of where you've been, where you have seen certain things, I think it really shows your heart in the work that you produce because you've been there, you understand the struggle, you've been around people that have experienced similar things, so you can provide a space
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
creatives can actually get those questions answered. So one of the questions you kind of touched on a little bit is how can creatives find balance between their work and their family priorities? We want to do so much. We're very passionate about what we do, but we still have to have those needs met at home.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the balance word is, I use it because it's the basic word that we have, Sandy,
Mhm.
but it's honestly a bad, work-life balance. I think you've probably heard in several different gurus and people like that say that's not really the case, right? We know
Yes.
it by life.
Yes.
So I use a musical term to try to be a little more honest about it. And I
Okay.
say it's rhythm.
Mm.
And we are designed, I believe, by God to operate in rhythm. We operate our hearts beat a certain rhythm.
Yeah.
Your heart does not beat the same speed as when you're sleeping as when you're awake. It's just natural. It immediately adjusts to the rhythm that is required. Your breathing, everything natural, I could go on and on. So our lives in terms of creative life to our entrepreneurial life to our family life, these operate in rhythm. The
Yeah.
rhythm for my family for the first 5, 6, 7, 8 years was all church. It was this is ministry. This is where so the kids were sleeping on the pew, right? That was the rhythm,
Yeah.
and they didn't suffer that. And I think it's one of the issues that we have sometimes as creatives that we feel like our family suffers
Mm.
when we go through certain like seasons. And if that's the rhythm that they're operating at, then they're cool.
Yeah.
They weren't adversely affected by that rhythm. Now, had I not included them in the rhythm, if I had like pushed them off to the side and not had them like involved in our lives,
Yeah.
then that would have been out of sync. So I think the key is again, not thinking in terms of balance, like work and life have to be the same all the time. Just like
Mhm.
the same beat would not work for every single song.
Yes.
It's a matter of rhythm that follows your life and then deciding that you're going to orchestrate. Again, I'm using all these musical terms. All these things have to be orchestrated to fit the rhythm of your life. And then you say, okay, kick drums in place, everything's in place. This all makes sense for the rhythm that I'm working with. And then, of
Mhm.
course, if the speed changes, you got to change the rhythm. You got to change how you
Yeah.
flow. You got to change things up. And that's what we've done throughout our lives as my wife and I as creatives and my business. My rhythm now is totally different. I am not playing the same. I am not singing the same song that I was 10, 20 years ago as a musician, as a creative, as an author. It's a different
Yeah.
rhythm, but it's because it's different circumstances. So I think that's the key is realizing that things will change and you should be comfortable with adjusting.
Mm. I like that. So, how are you able to align your business goals with your personal values?
Mm. So this is tough, right? Because it would be easy to say, well, they just should be aligned. But we all know that right now, again, it's always personal for me. It's easier to
Mhm.
say personal than try to give some blanket statement, right? So, personally, for me, of course, I would love my business to be a bigger income level.
Yeah.
However, as I just mentioned, does that really align with my personal values of spending time at home? Does it align with my personal value of my personal vision of collaborating with other artists to create highly motivated and highly valuable artwork for the world? Is that always aligned with a business goal? So now I think the question I think becomes which value is more valuable? Are your business goals at this point? Again, I'm not hating on anyone that has a business goal,
Yeah.
but is it in alignment with your personal goal? Because my personal goal may take that business goal and make it less valuable to me. Perfect example I can think of is when I usually don't name drop, but it helps to make context for this.
Mhm.
So the only big opportunity I had, I guess, to be on a big band that would have been like a national type of thing was when my friend opened for Gladys Knight, and
Okay.
Gladys Knight's producer, MD at the time, musical director, mentioned that he'd like me to audition. Well, at the time, Sandy, my oldest son was on the way, and my, I believe, either fiance at the time. I don't know. I'm, I don't remember where we were at. All I remember that things were in flux.
Yeah.
And it was like, yeah, if I make this call right now, this business goal is not going to align with my personal values because I need to be a dad and there's no way I'm going to be focused.
Yeah.
And so that's where I had to like make a hard choice. The business would have probably done better had I had a bigger platform, but it
Mhm.
also would have affected my family life. So not a easy, like cut and dry answer, but that's what I think it always comes out. It's constant reevaluation. It's constantly saying, is this truly the value that I want to pursue? And does it make sense for my business? Because I believe if it makes sense for your personal life and your family,
Mhm.
it will eventually make sense for your business as well.
I like that answer because it's real, like there is no cookie cutter way to do this. And at the end of the day, you want to make sure that decision that you made, you can live with and you can
Yep.
honor the fact of you saying this doesn't fit what I'm looking to focus on at this time in my life. So I think what you said is true. And I encourage people to do that. You know, you create this vision for yourself for the year, but you're always reflecting on, is this where I need to be right now?
Yeah.
Maybe in 3 months from now, it will be different, but right now I need to focus on this. And so for me, I'm always going to make sure I'm in line with what I want to achieve with my family. And
Yeah.
then the business has to come after, right? Because, you know, the business can come and go and change in all these different ways, but I have this finite time with my family, right? So I have to honor that. So I appreciate that answer.
Thank you. And I appreciate that you are so clear about what that means in the practical sense, because that's why I was attracted to your channel
Yeah.
and your message, because I think sometimes on the opposite, we can give ourselves a pass
Yeah.
and never really say, okay, are things shifting? Do I need to focus more on the business? Do I need to push this? Do I need to stay up a little bit later, wake up a little earlier?
Yes.
Because now it's like, well, I really need this and I really need that. And you're like, well, yeah, but your business is going to make all these other things easier. So I'm definitely not saying it's like, again, like you said, I love it. It's not a blanket statement, but I love
Yeah.
your 90-day framework, which forces you to remind yourself that everything is temporary.
That's it.
Everything is temporary. Everything has a season. To everything, there's a season and a time and purpose under heaven, right? So
Yes.
that is so clearly a mandate for us as human beings that I just think maybe social media or pressure or comparison makes
Mm,
us think that there's like this one size fits all. And
yes.
so I love the fact that your framework forces people to say, no, let's always look back and see if this is the right decision for me right now.
Definitely. Definitely. So let's talk about accountability and
Mm.
how that plays in your personal success. How do you use accountability, you know, with all these different roles you play? How are you able to be accountable to you so you can achieve the success you desire?
Well, there's so many things you could say about this phrase, right? And I don't want to go too deep. The first one that popped to mind that I would have to say first is accountability itself has sometimes been misused.
Hmm.
I've been taught this by my church, by my pastors, so I'm not going to take credit for it.
Yeah.
But the first thing is that accountability is not something that is outward driven. It is something that you are. If I am accountable,
Yes.
I don't require somebody else to account for. It is by nature who I am. I
Hmm.
am an accountable person. I am someone that can be held to account.
Mm,
Therefore, when I'm already operating under that in my own life,
yeah.
then I can be honest and open to somebody else to say, now that I'm operating in this, you are now allowed to look at the things that I'm taking account of.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing. And then again, like the teaching or the sermon that we heard about that, like rung in my ears as soon as you said it. That being said, now that
Yeah.
the people that are around me, that's where
Yes.
each season of my life or each section of my life requires those accountability partners, right?
Yes.
So in business, people like you, people like LaShonda Brown, who's a mentor of mine, people like Shane Sams and all the business things, Flip Lifestyle. I can name 3 or 4 different people in the creative and entrepreneurial space. I
Yeah.
mentioned Trent Phillips,
Hmm.
other people that I can look at in my local church. That's the spiritual side. My pastors, our men's ministry, and then in music, my musical community. I
Hmm.
just performed yesterday with one of my great friends, and she's like, "I'm coming over. We're not going to talk about music at all. We're going to talk
I
about
love
science and
it.
philosophy, and
Yes.
that if you have people around you that know who you are to the deepest level, you do not have to then invent like this kind of structure.
Hmm.
Which nothing wrong with structure.
Yeah.
But I think the accountability comes from those naturally born and honest relationships that you say, another word would be called intimacy, right? People say
Yeah.
intimacy.
Mm,
People may have heard that before, but it is not just intimacy in terms of romantic, it's intimacy in terms of accountability.
yeah.
Can you see into what I'm saying, what I'm doing, and see if I'm aligning? And if I said I'm accountable, I am an accountable person, then here's the count.
Yes.
It's like handing it over to your accountant. That's great. Like, yeah, look at that. So, like, exactly, you know about accountability more than anybody else, but you know that you can't do anything with the figures that you are given if that person hasn't yet first been accountable, so that
Yes,
you can do your job.
exactly.
So yeah, so I love this. I didn't realize I was coming around like that. That was a great
It's
segue.
beautiful. See, it's so true. I find sometimes it's something you said there that I think it's important to recognize. You have to feel comfortable that you would share, right? A lot of times, for whatever reason, people are in relationships or in a season of their life where they feel they can't share. They
Mm,
can't share that goal. They are afraid of, all these different factors, whether it's, your family or your friends, or even sometimes in your own mind, right? You've thought about something you desire to do, but you're so afraid of all these different things. And when they hear something maybe on the podcast or see me speak on other podcasts, it's like, I can share that. I can take that step. My friend did tell me about this thing and they seem really encouraged by me sharing. So maybe I can share a little more so they can help me on that journey. But to know that you have a space where you can have that intimacy to share what you truly desire and know that this person literally just wants to see you win. When
yeah.
I listen to your podcast episodes, that's what I come away from. Like, he's giving me as a creator tools so I can be successful. You just put something up on LinkedIn that we must talk about, the imposter syndrome, and
Oh
what
yeah.
you're learning about and how it's helping you to be able to help the creatives understand that this is something that you should take a deeper look in. And I love the way you described it and how you're discovering so many other things about it. So you must share.
Oh gosh, I'm no. I again, this is one of the safe places, right? This is where I feel even that you say, "Oh, you saw it on LinkedIn." It
Yes.
holds me to account. I'm like, am I honestly like sticking with what I just talked about 2 weeks ago on a podcast?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I wanted to quickly note that since you mentioned that, the accountability of the people around and the imposter syndrome.
Yes.
One thing I said in that, well, first, obviously we could put a link to the actual thing because I can't explain it any better than, it was in community that I discussed it in the
Yeah.
live stream because we do
Yeah.
creative checkups every Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern.
Yes.
So it was honestly during that discussion that a lot of these points popped up. But one of
Mhm.
them that I said was one of the ways to get away from imposter syndrome is by
Yeah.
hanging around more authentic people,
Ooh.
which leans right into what you just said about the
Yes.
people around you and feeling safe. And that's what God and Gigs 360 is why we created a membership.
I love that.
Honestly, it's not a pitch. It's like I just realized that as I was talking about it, I
Yeah.
was like, oh, this is where we keep from feeling like imposters because you have somebody beside you saying, no, I've seen your work. I
Yes.
see what you do, and you're not an imposter. So stop it.
Yes.
So you need people around in whether it's a membership or whether it's your coaching or whatever, you
Yeah.
need to invest in those places. But quickly, the scientific side that I think a lot of people don't realize, and I hooked on to, and of course
Yeah.
there's been TED Talks on this, is the Dunning-Kruger effect.
Hmm.
And basically it's the idea, again, I'm not a sociologist or a psychologist, but basically the idea that people who know less are more confident because they don't know what they don't know.
Wow.
And in creative life, I feel always bad about pointing out this, but we all know the know-it-all that doesn't know it all.
Yes.
And and it's just strange that we as God-gifted creatives oftentimes discount our own ability. And again, not referring to the study like it's like some kind of, you know, written down chart. I just made the inference
Hmm.
that people who know more also know what they don't know.
Yeah.
And we get sucked in by, oh my gosh, I'm so aware of my deficiencies because I've studied, I've paid attention, and I'm very aware of what I'm bad at.
Yeah.
And we let that stand in our way. So that entire talk and that podcast episode was all about how do we remind ourselves that just because we are aware of our deficiencies doesn't make it less confident about
Mm.
our ability to show up. And yeah, I really love that talk. But again, I love that you alluded to that uh, live stream, because a lot of those insights did not pop out until people said, "Hey, what about this?" And it was always in community that it was like, "Oh, there's safety to kind of go deeper here." Like you mentioned,
Yeah.
I like
Yeah.
my membership has become like a little college for creatives, but I think that's what it
Love it.
is. It's like a salon, and we just like add and add and add and just go deeper in the layers, and all of a sudden you're like, "Oh, I'm not alone, and I can be authentic and, and accountable." So yeah, no imposters in those groups. There's just not people.
Yeah.
Imposters don't show up there, so you're safe
I
if you
love
do.
it. I love it. And it's so important to have those groups where we can be with each other and learn and grow from each other, right? I think of life as a journey. And
Mm.
so, in order for me to get where I need to go, I'm going to have to stop for gas, right?
Mm.
I need to fill up. And so, when you're going, I've taken lots of trips from New York down to Florida and every state in between, right? So I love taking road trips. My husband loves taking road trips, my daughter as well. So I always think about this journey and this road that I'm on. And, sometimes we may stop in North Carolina, sometimes we stop in Virginia, sometimes we stop in PA, right? But at each stop, we're filling up, we're getting the things we need so we can continue along the journey. So, places like your community, it's like you go in there, you get with your people, you get what you need, you go into the Wawa, right? You're getting your sub,
Yeah,
you're
wow, wow.
getting your chips,
You
you're
get
getting
everything. Well, why you had to
whatever
go?
you
What?
need, right?
Yep, everything.
And so that's the thing we have to understand. Definitely, like you said, we don't have to be alone, right? As creatives, we're in our caves doing our things, but it's like, it's so good to pick up the phone, to get on the Zoom and like, Alan, this happened today. Have you experienced this? What do you think about this? Am I looking at this wrong? Just having those people that you can talk to and you can have conversation with. We can talk about, like you and I have talked about different podcast episodes, and I'm like, oh, he has to do this episode because I want to hear more, you know?
Yeah.
And so I think that to me makes life easier in this creative space, in my opinion.
Oh, you're 100% right. And I love the gas analogy. And one of the things immediately that popped into my head, and this is again, you can see even in this podcast episode how we're feeding each other and helping
Yes.
each other grow in community, in a relationship, is that you don't stay in the gas station. You gas to go.
Yes.
You
Yes.
get the gas, but people feel like, oh, one thing that one of my membership mentors said, which was really harsh, but really true. He's like, everybody's going to quit your membership. One way or the other, they're leaving. Either they're going to, like, they're going out the natural way, which none of
Yes.
us wishes for.
Yes. Yes.
Either they're going out the natural way, or they're going out, they've gotten what they needed.
Yeah.
And it was freeing. I think
Yes.
social media, the same thing. People are going to come for what they need.
Mhm.
They'll gas up, but they're not going to stay forever on your post, liking every single post and
Yes.
never leaving to go to someone else. They came
Exactly.
to get something.
Hmm.
And then they take what they got and they use it somewhere else. And we should be grateful.
Yes.
I've said this about, this is very going a little to deep ends of the entrepreneurial life,
Hmm.
but I've become thankful for unsubscribes, because now I describe unsubscribers from my email list as a self-cleaning list.
Mm.
It's a self-cleaning list. The people
Yeah.
who don't need it are little. I don't have to delete them. They
Yes.
said, "Here, Alan, a little less for you to do. Let me take myself off your list so you won't have to worry about."
Yes. Yes.
And so it's so much of that gassing up where we allow people to come in, we
Yes.
feed, we get together, we close up, we iron sharpens iron.
Hmm.
But then we go and actually do something with the gas. We go somewhere, we help
Yes.
someone, we
Yes.
create something. And then, like you said, when we get a little empty, we come back again, and we just know, like you said, Wawa. I guess we should get sponsor. You should get sponsorship from Wawa.
You know?
But yeah, shout out to, like, they've done a great business model where people
Yes.
keep coming back, which
Exactly.
means they're going to be in business forever, because they've created a place where when you need to fill up, and that's what each one of us need to do. We need to be a place. We need to
Totally.
be the Wawa.
That's it. That's it. And the thing about it is too, even when you think about people leaving, they tell other people, right? I tell you, hey, when I stopped here, I got this, right? So if you need it, you can
Yep.
get it at that place. So I'm okay with you leaving, but you may have a friend that needs to come. And so you tell that friend
Exactly.
about where you got what you needed. Because I agree too, like 90-day wins, the goal is for you to achieve those first 90 days and then you continue on, right? There are 4 quarters in the year. But maybe you get what you need in those first 90 days to allow for you to move on without that touch point you need, but you remember what sparked that for you, right?
Yeah.
And so then you can tell a friend who's telling you, I'm having a rough time, I want to do this. The best compliments I get are from people telling me their friend told me, you need to talk to Sandy. You need to talk to the 90-day wins lady. So I'm helping you fill up so you can go on that journey because I want to see you win. I don't necessarily need to be with you for you to win, you know?
Oh,
You can
that's
still win without
huge.
me being there, but you will let me know, "Hey, I just gotta win." And those are the best emails to get.
Isn't it? And isn't it amazing that most of the time those are the unexpected ones, the ones where the ripple effect has happened, the 7 degrees where you didn't know you impacted somebody, but they
Yes.
told a friend and they told a friend and they told a friend.
Yes.
One thing I'm having right now, which is an amazing journey that I'm on right now in my other role as a podcast producer,
Yes.
is one podcast that I'm working with that has an international following. And it's crazy how you'll see these emails from South Korea,
Yes.
from, and you know this, right? Because it's your podcast as well. And you'll be
Yes.
like, I've never visited these places. I don't know this language. I don't know
Yes.
this culture. But yet somebody either found me on Google or
Mhm.
most likely, like you said, somebody talked about it because
Yes.
there's so many offerings in the world, so many resources. How did they find you? How did they find me? It's most likely somebody else shared it.
Yeah.
And I think the joy of that is, I think, obviously in the spiritual sense, freeing ourselves from the need of thinking that everybody has to hear about everything. And if you're not getting all the likes and all the social media posts and all the accolades, I think I remember listening to your podcast about one of the gentlemen that made socks and that he
Yes.
just wanted to make socks. And that was like, it was gratifying for me just to hear, like, okay, if this is an interesting, not quite great, like the idea is going to like set the world on fire,
Yeah.
but it's
Yeah.
going to make somebody excited and happy and
Yeah.
comfortable.
Yeah.
Like that helped me just
Yeah.
that episode, thinking of somebody else that was blessed. And
Yeah.
so it's just those ripple effects. It could be word of mouth. It could be a tweet. It could be a text. But I think us as creators,
Mhm.
we do feed. It's careful. We have to be careful not to be addicted to validation.
Mhm. Mhm.
We can't become like our soul source.
Yeah.
God's got to be our motivation, our activation, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But we absolutely feed off of those emails. It reminds you, it's those little breadcrumbs that says you're going the right path.
Yeah.
Keep going. And yeah, 100%. It's the word of mouth referral is 100% more valuable than any advertisement, anything you could buy. It's the people that talk to people that make it authentic and make people understand that you're who you say you are and you have something to offer.
Yes. Yes. So talk to me about how you would encourage that person that's listening right now that is ready to do something different.
Hmm.
They have this desire to do something different, but they are that school teacher that's playing it safe, even though they're being convicted to do something different. What is the advice you would give them?
Sandy, this is why I love your show already, and I know we are sister and brother, because that's exactly the kind of question I would ask. And I am struggling right now even to answer it because I go back to that moment where I was in that classroom. I
Mhm.
go back to the moment where I was staring at the lesson plans and saying, God, this is what I thought I was supposed to do. And I love it. But at the same time, there's something else that's calling me to do something else.
Yeah.
And the thing I would say is the same thing that I think eventually helped me. I did not know it at the time.
Okay.
And what I would say is it is not about being confident. The conviction comes from when you are more concerned and more, even, I can't even say excited because you might not be excited about the future, might be freaked out about the future,
Yeah.
but you are more concerned about what might happen if you don't go than what happens if you stay. I became more and more convicted that if I don't step out, who are my children? What are my children going to say about their risks? What if my second grade son, who is struggling right now, and one of the reasons I felt called, we can go through a whole other thing because we got homeschooling and all the other things that happened in that season of my life.
Yeah.
But if my son sees me back up, when he sees down on the piano, he sees me at choir rehearsal, he knows good and well that dad loves to do this. And then he sees me back up and just say, no, you know what? I'm not going to try it. Unless I am very clear with him that this is where I'm called to. So I'm going to be faithful to this XXX. But if he sees me struggling and he doesn't see me take a leap, how is he ever going to take a leap of faith? And the person that's waiting for you is waiting for that leap of faith. And we wouldn't have this conversation if you hadn't taken the leap of faith. But if I hadn't taken the leap of faith, this podcast is literally not happening right now. So God is a God of obedience and sacrifice, but he's also a God of cooperation. He does not want to work without you. He can't. He does not want to. God does not want to do this without you. He wants to have you involved in the great adventure called life. And I would just say to you, imagine what you can't imagine. Imagine what you can't see. Imagine what you don't know. And then just say how many of those gaps could be filled in by a God who knows everything that you can't see, imagines everything that you can't imagine, and knows everything you don't know. And that's what I would say to that person who was me back in those days.
Man, I'm trying my best here not to, just have all these because that was for someone, but it touched me because I can remember exactly that I was consulting last year and I'm good at accounting. I have 2 degrees in it. I'm good in it. I understand it. I understand what needs to get done. I like the deadlines. I like to work on the projects. I like to, work with the IT team, make sure the systems are working good so the team can do what they need to do. But I knew I wanted to fully commit myself to this podcast, to my coaching. And it's like you said, I knew my daughter knew my heart. And I knew she was looking and she was observing and she was listening. I paid attention to how I felt doing podcast episodes and preparing for podcast episodes. I would stay up all night because I just loved it. Loved putting everything together. Like, people complain about the editing and all the things, but it's mine and I enjoy it and it just brings me so much peace. Why would I not pursue that full speed ahead and trust God, the same God that brought me this far, the same God that placed this desire within me and allowed for me to do so many things? He can provide everything I need. Really? That same God?
Same God. Say
And then
one.
you're encouraging people on this podcast, but what about you? What about you being truly committed and focused to what you desire? And so on those days when whatever is not going the way it should go, I can look out in the window and give thanks because I'm not in that cubicle. I'm not in that meeting that we really didn't need to have because I could
That
have
could
sent
have
the email
that
and
could
it
have
could
been
have
an
been
email.
that. So I
Uh,
quickly can be so grateful for the opportunity that I have now because I chose to be obedient and trust what God was showing me and the way he was showing me and not worrying about the when or the
yeah.
how, all of those questions that we keep in our mind that literally holds us from moving forward. So that answer you gave, yeah. It
But
touched me in so many different ways. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
oh no, God, glory to God and my pleasure. It's just honestly, like I said, I think that's why we feel this overwhelming sense of gratitude, but at the same time, this sense of kind of purpose and almost the I hate to say it like this, I can't even think of a better word, almost like the duh kind of, yeah, like this is what did you expect? God, like you said, if
Exactly.
God is that big and he's putting things together in place, like of course there's exponential growth. Of course
Yes.
there's a harvest.
Yeah.
I said this to my church the other day, and you led me here, so I'm going to go here. When we had a major service,
Mhm.
I love it. I wasn't ready. I was like, shocked. I was like, wait, what's going on with the video?
Exactly.
Uh, so I was telling them because it was an amazing service.
Mhm.
And I kind of said, yo, we've been working on this for 3 years. What y'all think was going to happen? Like, you've been preaching, practicing, praying, you've been practicing,
Yes.
you've been studying, and you're surprised. I think of I was talking to someone else. I think it was Kobe Bryant.
Mhm.
They were asking him about the 81 point
Yep.
thing, and he was like, yeah,
I
of course it
prepared.
was 81
Yes.
points.
Yes.
I've made that shot 100,000 times. Like,
Yes.
I don't know if it was me, it was us that was talking about it.
It was
Um,
us. It was us
See, I
on your
knew you came
podcast.
back. See,
Yes.
I knew it was coming back. It came right back. I give you credit because that's exactly what it was. It was us talking
Yes.
about that very same thing,
Yes.
and we are not surprised and not. But again, we're grateful. It's not a. It's
Yeah.
not a. It's not a hubris.
No. No, no,
And
no.
I just again kind of talk to those people, and I want to quickly add this little piece because I think it's so important
Mhm.
that we may think that it's a huge leap, but you take those small steps, you take the small leaps, and I'm sure you teach this way better than I can. The small bets,
Yeah.
you know, registering the domain, doing the small thing.
Yes.
You're not going all the way from Egypt to the Jordan in one step. It might be 40 years, it might be
Yeah.
40 days, but it's each step at a time. So don't think, even as you're hearing this, that we're telling you you got to leap off the plane.
No.
People that jump out of planes are the most prepared ever.
Yeah.
They know exactly where they're jumping. They know
Mhm.
exactly where they're going to land. They know how much fuel.
Yes.
They have worked on that parachute thing for 1,000 times. People who jump out of planes are not doing so out of faith. They're doing so
Yeah.
out of fact. They know
Yes.
exactly where they're going. So, so don't ever take that leap, take the leap of faith thing like it's not
Yeah.
prepared. You can
Yeah.
prepare and be very, very, very systematic and do it in the right way.
That's it. That's it. Because those nights that I would go to work and then come home, and then the evening we'd have dinner, and then the evenings were spent me preparing and encouraging myself and studying and learning and listening. So you are preparing yourself for where you're going, but you can't be afraid to take the steps, right?
Right.
And that's what happens. A lot of people, they get it all together, but they just can't move forward. They just can't take that step for whatever reason. And so that's where you want to think about, what am I afraid of? I remember with my coach, she says, what's the worst that could happen?
Right.
And so when I thought about the worst, what, I go back and be an accountant? That's not horrible.
not not a bad thing at all. You've kind of
Exactly.
proven it works quite well for you.
Exactly. So that's the thing. It's like just trusting and knowing, and definitely continue to put in that work and to continue to believe that you are moving in the way you need to go, and God will give you the people, the places, the things that you need, those tools that will help you.
Yes, he will. Yes, he will. 100%. And the fact that we are just in this place, like I said, makes me feel so much better about where I'm at, to be honest with you, as a creative. Because I can get comparison, syndrome. I can get
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
That cancer comparison. And it's just these little, again, it's not a tangible thing
Mhm.
that once you go on that road, it's not tangible things that remind you on the right path. It's the intangible, like you said, it's the
Mhm.
email.
Yeah.
It's the waking up and seeing that your son or your daughter is cheering you on.
Yeah.
It's the not always the support from people who don't understand, right?
Yeah.
It's the internet people like you and I and meeting that podcast and Chris Kremitos and those people who aren't even in your life yet that are
Yeah.
going to be that deposit to make you keep going. So
Yeah.
just remind yourself that, yeah, like these are the moments that remind you that you're on the right path. It's not always financial or incentives or anything else like that that's tangible that tells you you're moving in the right direction.
Yes. So before I let you go, Alan, tell us about whatever exciting thing you have coming, these next 90 days. What are you looking forward to? What are you excited about? It's a new season. So what are you excited about?
Well, depending on when this airs, I will most likely be a year older. That's kind of crazy. And then that comes into what's really happening in our membership and God and Gigs. It is It is clarifying. I wish I could say I know exactly what it is. Obviously,
Yeah,
we have our membership, God and Gigs 360. I'm really excited about the way that's coming together. And in my music career, I'm very excited. I'm really finally kind of in a place where I want to create new music. So I want to get into
awesome.
recording. And so my brain is kind of exploding with all these ideas of how do I now, like you talked about, put it into practice? How do I
Yeah,
take that 90-day goal,
yes,
actually step forward and say, okay, by the end of the summer, I'm going to be done with the production. I'm going to be done with the
yeah,
fundraising. I'm going to have the album cover. I will have launched this other podcast that I want to launch. I don't know why I'm launching more podcasts, but I am launching another podcast. And so all of these ideas need to be together, but I'm excited that I have the space and the clarity to do so.
yes,
And so, yeah, one of the things with God and Gigs 360, we've created a pass. I said, you know what? I'm working too hard to try to build a membership where people don't get a chance to see it for free. So
hmm,
I built in something for free. And that's the
yes,
kind of cool thing. You hit a button and you're like, okay, let's see what happens. And that's exactly what we've done. I just said, okay, we're going to change things up.
yeah,
So that's what makes me excited is that there's this infinite possibility, but there's also some very clear goals that I can set in
yes,
terms of recording, podcast, membership that I can say, all right, this needs to happen
yeah.
before I go any further. I need to go ahead and take these steps. So yeah, those are definitely like, I could list a million, but hopefully that gives you an idea like where I'm moving.
Definitely. So that I think is very exciting. And you got your 90-day wins lady here. So
Yes, I'm
however
ready.
I can help you, there's nothing we can make it happen. I truly believe it. And so I just thank you so much for being on the show. Thank you for your podcast and your space. I truly enjoy it. And I feel like that is a place where we creatives can come and be fed. So I appreciate it.
Well, it's my honor and pleasure to do that. And that's again what we talked about, just making a space and a place and knowing that you have a voice.
Yes.
So God and Gigs 360 is that place. 90-Day Wins is a place now that I feel comfortable and I feel at home. So thank you for
Yes.
having me on the show and giving us this opportunity.
Thank you, my friend.